You're listening to When Isabel Met Aviva, a podcast about rom-coms, female-driven screenwriting, and how to break into the entertainment industry. I'm Isabel.
And I'm Aviva.
And welcome to episode 7 of season 2 of our podcast. Today we are celebrating a writer that we both love. Obviously, we named a podcast after one of her movies, Nora Ephron. It is her birthday weekend, we'll just say.
Yeah.
So this is either being posted on her birthday or the day after her birthday, but we are celebrating the life of Nora Ephron in this episode. And we're going to be interviewing Erin Carlson, who wrote the book on Nora Ephron. I actually have it right next to me.
Yeah,
so in case anyone's watching the video, they can see what the book looks like.
I really like the cover.
Yeah, it is really
From
cute.
Sleepless in Seattle.
I love the name of it too. I'll have what she's having.
Yeah, it's so cute. It's such a cute reference. So yeah, she wrote about 3 of Nora's most iconic rom-coms, and we're excited to chat with her all about these films and why she wrote the book and the casting and the writing and everything in the Nora Ephron universe.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's bring Erin in and start talking about Nora.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yay. Thanks so much for joining us, Erin. We're so excited to chat with you about a woman we all love.
Yes.
Thanks for inviting me on. And I'm a little bit like Walter in Sleepless in Seattle. So I have a little bit of allergies. So if I just cough at random times, that's why.
I really relate to Walter, honestly. I'm also allergic to a lot of things. He's relatable.
He really is. Oh, justice for Walter.
Yeah.
I know. He's such a sweet character.
I was just thinking that just now, which character do we all identify with the most?
Oh, I've thought about this. Besides Walter and his allergies, I really identify with Patricia Eden in You've Got Mail.
Oh.
Patricia makes coffee nervous,
is
what Joe Fox says. And I feel like I make coffee nervous. I have just this general anxiety that I manage pretty well, but I'm constantly I would say I'm type A, like Patricia. I'm always doing something. I am not good at relaxing. So I feel like that character really speaks to me. And she was so great in that. Well, what about you? Who do you relate to in the Nora cinematic universe?
You go, Aviva.
Yeah. Okay, wait. I need to think. Who do I relate to? I mean, I relate to Sally, probably. Also kind of, liking things in certain ways. This is a hard question.
Yeah, we're just starting off with the hardest question. Walter.
Walter. I don't know. Isabel, do you have an answer?
Well, I was actually just laughing in my head because I was thinking that I think that I relate to a lot of the kids in the movies the most, like Jonah. And then what are the 2 girls' names in This Is My Life? Because every time I watch that, I always think about her daughter. I like her daughters, the older one that's kind of deadpan with her humor.
Oh, Samantha Mathis is the actress who played her. She's incredible and underrated.
I love her. Yeah, every time I watch that movie, I'm like, this daughter. I hope if I have a daughter someday, that's how my kid talks to me.
She's so cool.
She's so cool.
They were good at writing kids.
Yeah.
In Sleepless in Seattle, I'm blanking on this actress's name. I think it's because I haven't had my second cup of coffee today.
No, it's okay. I was like,
but she's fantastic.
Gabby
Hoffman.
Gabby Hoffman.
Great.
Yeah.
I relate to her too. Yeah.
In Sleepless in Seattle, the whole H&G, hi and goodbye.
Yes.
She's ahead of her time. I feel like she sounds like a Gen Zer or something.
Totally.
I do feel like I'm a little bit of Annie too, though. I'm a little bit I would probably totally at that time have gone to the depths that she did. Be like, I'm just gonna stalk this person.
That was the original Baby Reindeer. But
I've not seen that yet.
It ended much better.
I
can see me as Annie too. I have that I have a cynical side, but I have this kind of unfailing optimism. I was like,
yeah, that's what I think I am with Aunt Annie.
This belief in love, and plus I have this like deep love for Tom Hanks that I've written about him in 2 of my books. And I was like, my next book does not include Tom Hanks, and my husband is very surprised by this. He's like,
it's like, what? You didn't find a way to make it about it?
How are you? Right. But I feel like I have, in my own way, stalked Tom Hanks through my books.
Yeah. I feel like I'm definitely a little bit of Annie. I'm just like a hopeless romantic like that. And I'm totally blanking on what Rosie O'Donnell's character's name is. I feel like
Becky?
Becky, yeah. I'm also that friend. Like I would be that friend to my friends who would be like, maybe you need to just go to Seattle and do it
Becky is
for research.
I'd say Becky is probably my favorite character maybe in the whole universe. Maybe. I really love her. She is such
a good
great
loyal friend.
Yeah.
I want to watch a rom-com just about Becky.
Yeah.
That character.
Yeah, she's
just
so
that whole
confident.
just the whole movie, but just from her perspective.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Like kicks her boyfriend to the curb. Or was she married in Sleepless? I can't remember because they didn't flesh her out. Because you're right, she was the influence,
Yeah.
She's like, go to Seattle. You're not in love. You're in love with love in the movies. Yes. But she also believes that Annie should pursue Sam Baldwin.
The conversation when she's writing the letter, that is like one of my favorite scenes ever.
Yes. So good.
I feel like if they made a spin-off to Sleepless in Seattle, it would have to focus on Becky, right?
Yeah.
We want her to find love. Just like Annie.
Definitely.
But they could remake it now with Rosie, maybe, but Rosie's doing her own thing, filming just like that. But somebody like Rosie, but younger, I think.
Yeah. So can you talk to us about, what inspired you to write the book and your background and being a rom-com historian?
Well,
yeah, I know. We love your title.
Yeah.
I mean, I never, ever saw this title on my vision board. So I grew up, in the 80s and 90s watching these rom-coms, on VHS, like every single weekend. And my mom, was a breadwinner of our household, very Norah in her way. And she really liked highbrow movies, foreign films, art house films that I had no interest in. So I would watch Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail on VHS and then DVD. And she'd be like, why do you watch these movies all the time? Don't you get tired of them? And I never did. So I moved to New York, worked as an entertainment reporter for the AP and the Hollywood Reporter. And then I was like, because of my aforementioned kind of restless personality, I was like, you know what? I would like to lead a walking tour of Nora Ephron romantic comedy locations in the Upper West Side where she lived. So
the dream.
There was this startup called Side Tour where you could just make up your own tour and just do it. So I led this tour with my friend Jennifer Armstrong, I think one Sunday of every month. And we sort of put it on Twitter. And then it grew. Our first tour, the Wall Street Journal covered.
Oh my
We're
gosh.
like, what? We don't know what we're doing. So we and this woman and her husband flew all the way out from Arizona because they had heard about the tour from, on Twitter, and it was their honeymoon. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
But it was so fun. And we met them at the corner of 69th and Columbus, which was the site of the exterior of the shop around the corner, which is now an organic dry cleaners. I don't know what's organic about it, but some of these locations have closed.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, this tour is a thing now. And then, so we did that tour, and I felt like I wanted to write a book because as a reporter, I felt like I was writing the same stories as everyone else, and it was getting kind of old. I wanted to focus on my writing, and I was like, if I wrote a book, what would it be about? And I thought about Norah, Ephron and her iconic trilogy. So When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail. And I was like, there has been no book out there that has talked about the making of these movies. So I just put together a little nonfiction book proposal, which is a mini book that tells publishers how this book will sell. I never thought this proposal would sell. I got an agent in a week.
Wow.
And then it sold in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, wait, I think there's an idea here. Yeah, and I was right. So I wrote the book. It's called I'll Have What She's Having, How Nora Ephron Saved the Romantic Comedy.
Got it right here.
Yes.
I have it on Audible.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh. I feel like the Frank Navasky of this book. I'm like, thank you, you're. But yeah, that book came out. I didn't think anyone was going to read it. And I'm still surprised that people do read it. So thank you for having it and buying it. And yes, since that book was published, I've continued covering romantic comedies and writing about them and just, loving to see where they're going. I feel like there's so much influence that Nora has had on rom-coms that you see, smart women like yourselves, have learned from her, have grown up with her, and are incorporating her touches of her influence in your own work, which is great to see. And yeah, I've become like a spokesperson for Nora Ephron. There's a bookstore in my neighborhood. It's in San Francisco. It's an Italian language bookstore. I don't know why, but they sell like English language stuff too. So anyway, I walked in one day and I was wearing my Film by Nora Ephron hat, which Super Yaki sells.
Yeah,
I have the
you have the shirt, right?
That. I have the crop top. Why didn't I wear that? Okay.
Yeah. And the Italian bookstore owner was like, "Are you Nora Ephron's agent?" And I was like, no, but kind of.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the long-winded
amazing
answer of this story. So
yeah.
Have you met any of her family members?
I have interviewed Delia, her sister and collaborator, and Delia is so funny. Well, I don't know that she gets enough credit for her role. So you talked about this is my life.
My life, yeah.
This is I'm like, this is your life. This is
I know,
my
yeah.
life.
I always forget what the title is, but yeah, this is my life. Yeah,
this is my life. She collaborated on that with Nora because they both had a screenwriter, artist, mother. And that movie's about this woman who becomes a very successful comedian and her daughters sort of feel left out.
Yeah.
So Nora and Delia understood that because their mother, Phoebe, like wrote, movies like Carousel and Desk Sets, Take Her, She's Mine in the 40s and 50s. So they grew up with a powerful artist woman, which then influenced them as adults. So then Nora and Delia had a common language, a common history, a common sense of humor. But Delia was much more romantic and sentimental. And she had this, she was a hopeless romantic. Whereas Nora, people said this to me, was not sentimental at all. She, I believe she was, but she sort of guarded that side of her heart. In real life, on the page, she certainly was sentimental. But Delia was a force who sort of brought that emotion into Sleepless in Seattle, which she also wrote with Nora, and You've Got Mail. I can read those scripts and tell you what the lines that Delia wrote.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I do. You just know.
Is she still writing now?
Yes.
Okay.
She wrote a memoir called Left on 10th that I think came out last year, and it's about she was diagnosed with cancer. It talks about her cancer diagnosis and her meeting the second love of her life after her husband died, and as an older woman. And that's going to be a Broadway show. That's going to be a Broadway play that will open this fall with Juliana Margulies in that role. So, so yeah, she's still writing. Like Nora would be if Nora were alive today. But yeah, she was in many ways the heart of a lot of these films. But she doesn't give enough credit because Nora's this mythic figure. But yeah, I talked to her for it, and that was really fun because the way they wrote scripts together, I was like, how did you collaborate? They would sit in Nora's home in the Hamptons, and they would sit on the same couch, and they would just tag team different scenes. And then I think they wrote You've Got Mail in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
Like they just, it was easy for Nora to write with Delia because they just understood each other as sisters can. So that was my long answer again.
No, yeah, it makes me a little sad though, because you're right. I do feel like when like you see the credits, I remember always just seeing like Delia Ephron and like thinking in my mind like, oh, like is that her sister? But it does. I feel like when we think of these movies, like everybody knows the name Nora Ephron, but
right. Well,
it must be
interesting. Right. It must be it was a little hard for Delia because so the script for Sleepless in Seattle, it was written by this guy named Jeff Arch, and he's from he was not from the Seattle. I think he was from Virginia. But anyway, he set this film in Seattle, and he was the original writer for that script, but it was long, it was melodramatic, it wasn't really funny.
Yeah.
But the studio was like, this is great. Let's make this movie. And so they gave it to another guy, Jeff Ward, who added more jokes. Like he added the bathroom scene with Jonah. And I feel like Jonah's brushing his teeth, that scene.
Yeah.
But then the studio was like, it needs more work. So Nora went on, did a rewrite, brought Delia on to help her. And then Nora's like, well, I want to direct this now because I changed the script and it's better, basically. So when, because of we love unions are great, but because of union rules, only 3 writers were allowed to be credited on that script. So Delia's name was left out. And that script was nominated for a screenwriting Oscar.
Yeah.
So Delia,
oh my gosh.
So Jeff Arch, I think Jeff Ward, and then Nora were nominated, but Delia was not.
Oh
wow,
man.
Yeah,
but
I didn't even realize that.
She was used to being like sort of in her sister's shadow.
Yeah.
So I think she was okay with it.
Yeah.
Well, so I know.
Yeah.
So.
We might have to bring her on the podcast.
We would love to have her on the podcast.
See if she'll open up to us.
Yes.
Yeah. You should. Actually,
that would be amazing.
Great idea. Yeah.
We're going to start manifesting that now.
Yeah,
Delia.
let's do it.
If you're
Let's
listening,
yeah.
we're ready to hear your side of the story.
You should email her publisher for the memoir.
Okay, yeah,
we'll
that's it.
We'll
she can market her memoir on our podcast.
Yes, please.
I don't have too much in common with Nora, but I'm always telling people, you should talk to this person. And that's the extent. But yeah.
I forget what we were originally talking about.
Yeah.
The family.
The
family.
Okay. Just if she'd interviewed. Yeah.
Yeah. Nick Pileggi, I wanted to interview her husband, her third and best husband, but he understandably, didn't want to participate. He also didn't participate in Everything is Copy, which was Nora's son's documentary about Nora. I think he's just very Italian and very this is my secret. He's very loyal.
Yeah.
He's like, this is sacred.
Yeah.
But I get it. I mean, he's like, everyone, what did everyone say? They called him her consigliere. Like he would be like tipping people on the way out of restaurants. And I had interviewed Nora's one of her personal assistants from the early 90s. She said that Nick is a saint. Like even when Nora took up their closet space in their apartment at the Apthorpe, he never complained. They rarely fought. he was just enamored with her.
Oh,
Just enamored.
that's so cute. How did she meet
know.
him? I don't know this
Oh.
love story.
So she, her first husband was a quirky guy. You know, her trial husband.
Yeah.
This quirky, funny guy named Dan Greenberg. So that didn't last too long, although they got married in at Rockefeller Center in the Rainbow Room.
Wow.
Where Annie broke up with Walter to go to the Empire State Building to meet Sam. So,
Poor Walter.
Right? Poor Walter.
Just keep thinking now, yeah, Walter does need some justice.
He's so sweet. But he's sweet in While You Were Sleeping. I feel like I'm a different character, but I feel like he gets his like redemption of being like a rom-com lead.
Right. And he was like the hot leaner. Like he just leaned. He was hot.
So attractive.
Hot leaner.
Like that movie made Bill Pullman, he was just one of those guys that was more handsome in real life. Like he'd walk into a casting room and like, you know, a female director would blush because he was just that kind of guy. But on screen, it doesn't really capture it.
Yeah.
It doesn't capture his handsomness. But there's a reason he was cast in these roles, because he was like a fox back then, but more in real life. But Nora, and how did Nora meet Nick? So then she was married to Carl Bernstein, the famous journalist, who also infamously left her when she was 8 months pregnant, or 7 or 8 months pregnant with her second child, which is why she wrote Heartburn, her roman à clef about the experience. So they divorced, and she was just sitting in a restaurant one night when this very elegant Italian-American journalist that she had known, you know, for a while. He was on the scene, but he covered the mafia for places like the AP. So he had his own beat. You know, he wasn't like at Elaine's every night, hobnobbing with like Woody Allen and those people. He was like covering the mob, which is really cool, I think. So anyway, he was like, I'd like to take you out. So I think she was in her early 40s. And then they got married when she was 48 in a surprise wedding at the Apthorpe. So people showed up, and I feel like people do these surprise weddings now. It's my birthday party, but it's really like, we're getting married. So that kind of happened when she was 48 in their apartment at the Apthorpe. Nick had moved in. The kids were there, her kids with Carl. It was a small wedding. She cooked the food for it. She hated her wedding dress. But yeah, she didn't want a big thing. She didn't want a big wedding, but it was just the perfect wedding for them. So they stayed together from then on. And it was her third and best husband, because he would do things for her, like little small things that don't seem like a big deal, but actually are, you know, simplest things, just are acts of love. She would collect subway tokens to make sure she had enough tokens to ride the subway, you know, and that kind of thing. He was just a sweet and loving man, and he didn't have an ego. He wasn't trying to compete with her. He wasn't resentful of her success. He celebrated it. And I think that's also why that marriage worked for so long.
It makes me happy to think that like the queen of rom-coms like had like her leading man, like she had her mute cute like after her two other husbands.
That was so good for my book too.
Yeah. A good arc.
I was like, this arc is great. Yeah.
I would love. Yeah. Sorry,
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just, and why just a broad question. Why have her films made such an impact? Why have they defined the rom-com? Why do we keep watching them now?
I think part of the reason I think they've lasted so long is because back then there were more rom-coms in the theater. we just all saw the same movies. And now everything is so fragmented. Like I'm still watching season 2 of Hacks that came out like 3 years ago. And people are on to season 3 of Hacks.
Yeah.
And then Bridgerton is starting.
I watched that yesterday.
I'm trying to finish this book, Lessons in Chemistry.
Yes,
and like,
I'm reading that too.
And I'm just completely, which I'm 3 years behind that. And I finally saw Challengers, but it felt like I saw Challengers 3 years, you know, after people started talking about it when it was really a week. So, but back then, like there were less distractions and everyone just saw like nice movies at the theater.
Yeah.
And I feel like those movies stood out in that golden age of rom-com, as well as the Richard Curtis movies, like Notting Hill and My Best Friend Julia movies also stand out to me. But those in particular, because of the scripts were funny and moving. So people don't think of Nora as like you know, somebody who who's sad or likes to write about sad things. But she and Delia both had like you know, they weren't afraid to touch on those topics. Sleepless in Seattle was very sad. It's about a guy who's, you know, who's grieving and, you know, needs to have faith in love again and take that chance. And You've Got Mail is the saddest, you know, saddest movie ever. It's like Kathleen having to close her mother's legacy, that store, and just accept this change and move on. And it was also about gentrification. And so in the ever-changing New York City. So I think their movies had a lot of substance. They weren't superficial, but they had the romantic tropes and like the fun scenes and like the funny observations, but they were also about deeper things. They also had great cast chemistry. The casting, we talked about Rosie, like even the side characters of Suzanne and You've Got Mail. Every character was just cast perfectly. And then Tom and Meg, I mean, a good rom-com that stands the test of time is the script and the casting, you know, the right actors to say those words. And Tom and Meg were just like perfectly suited for each other. They like Nora told Parker Posey, she's like, you know, I think they kind of look alike. And I don't see it, but they have that sense of whimsy and that sense of timelessness. You could drop them in 1940, in a rom-com in 1940, and they'd work. You could drop them anywhere. And then they're just like really open to giving vulnerable, emotional performances. Whereas now, like back then, a lot of men like Tom Hanks, like Hugh Grant would do rom-coms, but nowadays it's harder to get men to do them, you know? So, so we tend to look back at Tom and Meg as like the golden era. We look back very nostalgically because you had an actor like Tom Hanks who was willing to do a romantic comedy. And he told me for the book, he's like, you know what? Like, because I was like, what was it filming? What was it like filming with Meg Ryan at Cafe Lalo? He's like, you know what? It was the hardest thing ever. You got to bring your A game because she will leave you in the dust. You know, you think she's going to do one thing and she does another thing. She kept him on her toes. And like, I was watching the other day, Mother of the Bride, the new Netflix movie with Brooke Shields and Benjamin Bratt. He had to be dragged onto this movie. He didn't want to do this movie because men like that, they don't want to do rom-coms as much anymore. But I was watching it and I was like, Brooke Shields is a natural comedian. She's just radiant. To me, she's radiant, like Meg. But I was like, she needs an equal co-star. Like Benjamin Bratt he's like an AI prompt. He's so hot. He's like, you know what I mean? Who do you want to star in this movie? But I was like, she needs like a Tom Hanks type. I don't know who can keep up with her. But anyway, this is another long answer. And I love Benjamin Bratt. I think he's extremely painfully handsome. But
It does feel
yeah.
Well, we were just
Yeah.
talking earlier about how, like, yeah, I do feel like rom-coms today, it's kind of more like about the like sex appeal of it. It's like we need like the people have to be like super hot, like it's all got to be like shot really pretty and everything versus like, yeah, like I mean, I guess we're also a different generation, right? It's like to us, like at the time, it's like I watch those movies and I'm like Tom Hanks, Billy Crystal, like, oh, they're so cute, but I'm not like, oh,
You're not
like they're my,
drooling
yeah,
about,
I'm not like
yeah,
drooling
they're
over
not
that.
sex symbols,
I-
really.
Yeah.
I'm torn about this because because I feel like back in the 80s and 90s you had if men were producing or making the rom-com or
Mhm.
like writing the rom-com, they'd be like, I'm thinking of the Farrelly brothers too. They're like,
Yeah.
I want to cast a guy that looks like me, which is why we got Jack Black, you know,
Mhm.
in the worst movie ever, which is Shallow Hal.
yeah.
Yeah, I grew up on
But
that
now
one.
I feel like the movies are being made for the female gaze, not to use
Yeah.
that phrase, women's studies phrase.
Mhm.
But I feel like they're getting more people in the room who are like, okay, who could we cast for women?
Yeah.
Which is also why in Mother of the Bride, which I do recommend, we also get Chad Michael Murray, who plays a love
I need to
interest.
see that. Yeah,
I was like, I didn't even recognize him. He's the hottest thing. I was like, what? He had a glow up.
Their classic mid 2000s hottie.
And I was like, what happened to him? Because he did not do it for me back then. But he had a glow up.
Wow.
So I feel like
you're selling me on this movie.
I know, yeah.
You have to like, and he plays like this doctor who's like vacationing in Thailand. Once again, exotic escapist location. And then he, you know, like he's interested in Brooke's character, who is a world-renowned geneticist. Which, I mean, it seems like it's I feel like all the heat from the romance novels that are really popular right now is like transferring to the movies.
Yeah.
So those were always steamy, and romance novelists will tell you too, we wish these movies were open door.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, well, this is Hollywood and it's different. So you have to, you know, you have to close the door a little.
Yeah.
But I think the door is opening.
Yeah.
But I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at Benjamin Bratt, the AI prompt casting. I do not think scripts should be written by AI, but
no.
casting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking to like we were wondering about like how did Nora decide like for it to be Meg and Tom, because in When Harry Met Sally, right, Meg wasn't like the first person like up for the role.
Yeah.
And then obviously Tom isn't in that movie, but I'm kind of curious if like did she see them interacting and she was like, oh my gosh, they have chemistry, or like how did she know to put them together?
So there was sorry, I'm weltering now with my audio.
I feel like we need to keep all the like little Walter things in here, so anytime
homage
anyone
to Walter.
coughs, Walter.
Walter. It makes it less gross when you cough too. You're like, oh, that's cute. So she had, so Tom and Meg filmed a movie. Their first movie together is lesser known. It's Joe versus the Volcano. And it's very high concept comedy that people hated at the time when it came out in 1990. And I just loved it.
I was gonna say I love that movie.
I love how weird it is. John Patrick Shanley is the writer director, and I love him. And he's just weird and wonderful. And he also wrote Doubt, which I love, the Meryl Streep nun movie. But anyway, this is not about John Patrick Shanley, but he, Nora came to the set one day because she was on the studio lot. And she watched a scene with Tom and Meg, and she really enjoyed their chemistry. So she noticed it, and she was like, "Oh, okay. There's something going on there." Okay. So when the Sleepless in Seattle job came around, and she was like, "Okay, I improved the script. Now I want to direct it." She was very focused on casting because she knew that the performances would make the movie. So she had Meg in mind. They cast Meg first as Annie Reed. Sam Baldwin. Now, this is despite Nora like having, seen Tom and Meg in action on the set of Joe versus the Volcano. She was a little skeptical of Tom Hanks at first. She didn't know if he was sexy enough or handsome enough to play Sam, because she was thinking of somebody like she had grown up with, in LA. She had seen Cary Grant. She had been on sets with her mother where Cary Grant was there, and she thought she needed somebody like that. Mm-hmm. But Cary Grant is like this 1 in a million style. He's, you can't recreate him. He's like Beyonce. Like, you can't recreate this. Like, somebody as handsome as they are talented. So Tom was like, give me a chance. Because he had made like 5 flops, including Joe versus the Volcano and Bonfire of the Vanities. So she's finally like, okay, I'll meet you. So they met at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and he just charmed her, as he does. He, like, when you meet him in person, like, you see it, like, he's so funny and so smart that he becomes more handsome. So afterwards, she goes to somebody. She's like, yeah, I think people want to sleep with Tom Hanks. I think they do. So she cast him as Sam. And she was focused on, for the next, few weeks or months after casting Tom and Meg, she was focused on casting like the Jonah and like the side characters, and was really granular about that and trying to make sure every detail was perfect in pre-production. So she and Tom weren't really communicating. And he was like, he wanted control over who was, who the kid would be, who his movie son would be. He wanted more communication from her. But, there was a communication breakdown. So a week before filming was supposed to begin in Seattle, he got cold feet. And he's like, I don't know if I want to do this movie.
Oh, wow.
And so they had a come to Jesus moment at, I think, the Four Seasons in LA. And they brought, like, it was like, come to Jesus, like, all hands on deck. Tom was in this conference room. Tom was pacing back and forth and like going through everything he didn't like about the script. And while Nora and Delia were there, like, frantically taking notes, because this is their star, right?
Yeah.
And one of his problems was that he thought Sam was too wimpy, because I feel like in an earlier iteration of the script, Sam did not want to leave Jonah with the babysitter to go on that weekend with Victoria.
Oh. I think I've read the older version of the script. I feel like I remember that where you're talking about.
I've read it as well for a class. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. So he was like, I'm going to stay home with my son.
Yeah.
And Tom goes, he's a dad. If he has he's a single dad. If he has an opportunity to get laid, he's going to take it. He's a man. He's a man. And then Nora was like, he's a dad. He's going to want to stay home with his son. So they bickered about that. But eventually she incorporated his notes into the script, because Tom is a good writer himself. And he had this idea of who that character should be, that he felt was more authentic to his experience as a former single dad in between marriages, So finally he made it to set. Hanks got there. All was well. But Tom Hanks was a little cranky in those days. He had a trailer. He brought his son Colin to set. So he stayed in his trailer, and he was addicted to coffee, because Starbucks was like a thing back then. And there was very good espresso in Seattle. So he was just, he told me he was like mainlining coffee like it was hot chocolate. He was like, I might have been a bit cranky in those days. And the production, the production people actually told me he was a little bit, wiseacre curmudgeon type. Whereas Meg doesn't really remember making the movie, because she had just given birth to her son 3 months before. So she was in new mother haze. But on the set of You've Got Mail, Nora used the same production staff over and over again. So the people who worked on You've Got Mail noticed that Tom was completely different. You know, he had changed. He didn't want to stay in his trailer. He wanted to like be on set and talk to everyone and just be the Tom Hanks that we know and love. And he was just, you know, in much better spirits, probably not as addicted to coffee.
I was gonna say, yeah. What was his coffee addiction at this time?
He's
he had toned it down to just like a couple cups a day.
I can see Rita telling him no coffee after noon. I can see that. But on You've Got Mail, Tom and Meg were just like in jubilant spirits, and that was a movie where everything synced up, everything was working, and Nora was like really in her stride. And she and Meg, and who told me? Oh, Greg Kinnear, who played Frank Navasky, told me this. Like, scenes were delayed because Meg and Nora were giggling so much. They were laughing so much, and it was like, why? But obviously, you know, why are you Greg Kinnear was like, I think that Meg felt like she had to be in that headspace in order to play that character. Because at that point in her life, she felt like she was being pigeonholed in the genre. Whereas Tom Hanks was like, oh, I can win an Oscar for Saving Private Ryan, or I can win an Oscar for Forrest Gump, and then maybe I'll do a Nora rom-com because I love Nora and I love her craft services tables. But Meg was just being like kind of pigeonholed in this genre that she was so amazing in. So she kind of wanted to go do darker things. So she was kind of ready for to go a different route in her career, but she had to get in the giggles to play Kathleen Kelly, and it worked. Whatever process she did, it worked.
It was just like a tidbit that I remember from reading the original Sleepless in Seattle script is the peeling of the apple, you know, that detail, I believe wasn't even in the original. Like, it was added later, like with Annie doing it as well, you know, and I love that. I just wanted to add that.
I love that scene so much that when I think about it, I get weirdly emotional. I was like, why is this scene just like, when I think about it too much, like I start to like, I'm like, I have to go
really
in the other room.
Beautiful. It just that parallel of you know, Jonah's mom and then Annie doing it as well. It's just such a lovely kind of quirky almost detail to include about a rom-com lead.
And it's such a Nora thing to do. Oh, I'm sorry. With food, she was such a foodie, so she would use
Julia later.
You know, a piece of fruit and a very mundane thing, like peeling an apple in one long curly strip to make this parallel between Annie and then you know, Sam's, you know, late wife. Yeah. Like, we know that Annie is the one because she too can peel an apple that way. And Meg wanted to use a Granny Smith apple because that was her favorite breed of apple.
I love that detail.
I was thinking while you were talking that, like, when we think about, like, why are these movies, like, why do they stand the test of time? Why do we keep watching them? And I do think a big part of it is that this is something I find is generally missing in like the current movies a lot, right? Is like a lot of those little details that I feel like do kind of get cut these days, right? As like, oh, this is just like, what is this really doing to the movie? Or like, what is this like just adding like this extra scene that like it doesn't really maybe do that much to the story, but I feel like those little details do bring the story together. Like we said, it's like it helps us understand that, like, yeah, she really is the one, and it really adds to that. But even just going back to what we were talking about with Tom, it's like, I think even though he isn't like the like sex appeal type of guy, at least like for some of our perspective, I do feel like you just fall in love with him because of his personality and like his character's personality that is like so well developed like throughout the whole movie, that like in today's movies it does feel a little bit more where like if like Tom had been had not been cast, and if it had been someone more like Cary Grant, like you would just, it would feel a little bit too like, oh, what are the chances that like he's actually this like super handsome like movie star type of looking guy versus like I just feel like there is something to it working that he's kind of like not like the like A-list celebrity like handsome. He's like he's cute, but it's more that his personality is just like so fun, so I don't know, normal. It makes it kind of feel like more attainable for the average person that like this could actually happen in like a weird cosmic way.
Absolutely. And it's funny, the ordinariness of him in this extraordinary situation. I feel like that really speaks to a lot of men. I was surprised, like, first of all, I never thought anyone would read my book. But I was surprised that by the response from men.
Interesting.
That are like, I just really love Tom Hanks and I love these movies. And then one woman emailed me. She's like, my husband has read the paperback of your book 1 million times. It's nearly destroyed. I can't, and I was like, what? I was like, not you? But I think Tom Hanks has a lot to do with that. And I was thinking of like, we talked about how hot all the guys are now, the Benjamin Bratts, the Glenn Powells, who I love. But I think one of my favorite leading man today, not to like steer the conversation away from Tom, but somebody like Tom would be Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
And he's, I think, my favorite leading man of today, because he is so normal. One of my favorite movies is Long Shot.
Yeah, I love that movie.
And he is so great in it because he's funny, he's relatable, he's a little dorky, but he's so sweet, and his sweetness and the way he supports Charlize Theron. I was like, oh, he just got like, 1,000 times sexier by the end of the movie because his personality was so winning. Going back to Tom Hanks now, I feel like only Tom Hanks at that time could play Joe Fox, who like on paper, he's pretty vile, right? He's a corporate robber baron, dating Patricia Eden, who's also kind of awful, even though I identify with parts of her personality. And he closes the shop around the corner, which is, to me, morally wrong. But why do we forgive him for it? Yeah. Because it's Tom Hanks. And he's so like, he taps into Joe Fox's whimsy, his sweetness, his intelligence, and all the parts of that character that are so right for Kathleen. And you want them to be together because then the universe will feel complete again. Yeah. So yeah, it's only Tom Hanks could pull that off, right? Yeah. I can't think of anyone else who could.
I know. I don't think anyone else could. I have been rewatching The OC recently, and I have fallen back in love with Adam Brody as Seth Cohen, who again, I just am like, yeah, he's kind of just like a tall, lanky, nerdy dude, but like his humor, his wit, his personality just makes you fall in love with him.
You know who else is a good?
He's
Michael
so hot.
Cera, as well.
Michael Cera.
I feel like Michael Cera, like I was thinking of like Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist the other day, and that's just such like, he's just also so like likable and quirky, and maybe we just don't need as many like hot men. Not that he's not hot, but like,
it's
like
just
I feel like
that hotness and attraction doesn't have to just fully be like how you look. You don't need to have a 6-pack abs. Like, I mean, we don't need that. Hot, but like I also think he was hot when he was in what's the movie with Zoe Dutch where he's like a little bit more nerdy. Yeah, Set It Up. It's like he's not like his like Top Gun style version of himself in that movie, but I almost prefer him in that movie than I do anyone but you.
Me too.
There is the new Gina Rodriguez Netflix rom-com. What was it called? She's a sports writer.
Something.
Players.
That's what it is. Okay.
I have not seen it yet.
So yeah, I was like, should I see this? Somebody was like, yes, it's really funny. Damon Wayans Jr. is in the movie, and he falls into that category of that like adorable Michael Cera, Seth Rogen unassuming, the hotness sneaks up on you,
Yeah.
like camp. And that I highly recommend.
Okay, we'll watch
Gina
it.
Rodriguez is hilarious.
I really like her.
Like she's like a natural comedian and just understands the beats of the rom-com and how to like, you know, she's just funny.
Yeah.
She's just funny. And Damon Wayans Jr.
Damon
I feel like there's so many Wayans.
Yeah.
Um,
Damon Wayans Jr., the second.
right. Right. And he's just like, he's great in that too. I think he's one of those guys. But yeah, I think we need a nice balance. The Glenn Powell's, you know, the anyone but you Glenn Powell types, and like the guys next door.
Yeah.
Michael Cera, he was so great in Barbie.
Oh
like,
yeah,
I wanted
he
more
was
from
really
him
cute
in Barbie.
that, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Like he was too good for Kenland or whatever it was called.
Kenland, yeah. I have a fun question that I would love to ask, though, maybe to like sort of start to wrap this up would be, I'm curious what your thoughts are on like if Nora were still alive today, do you know what she would be writing? What do you think she'd be writing? Was there anything like, you know, in your research that like pointed to like what her next project would have been?
I thought about this. I think she'd have ditched Twitter for Threads, and she would just be like posting her one-liners, and just getting her opinions out there as a pundit, like she was. But as a writer, I think she'd be doing more movies like Julia and Julia, or Julie and Julia, which was about an older woman, you know, pivoting, doing a career pivot, and you know, starting something new, which was Julia Child becoming a TV personality at like age 50 or on her path to that, and kind of finding herself and having a second act. And I think Nora would be writing and making movies and series about women having second acts. I think of Hacks. I see her voice in that show.
Yeah.
I see her writing for creating Deborah Vance, a character like that. I see her writing, directing the adaptation of Lessons in Chemistry, which they've already done. Yeah. I see her focusing on older women and maybe writing another. I'm talking about her as if she's still here. Yeah. I could see her writing another project for Meryl. But focusing on older women's stories for sure.
I think you're right. Yeah. I totally see that. I just thought I have one random little question too that I thought about that I'm curious if like what is the correct pronunciation of her last name, because I do get asked a lot if because like Ephron, like Zac Efron and Nora Ephron sound so similar that I have been asked before if they are related.
No.
Obviously they're not, but
they could not be more different. Although I feel like Nora would like him. She liked him. She liked handsome young men. This is true. But yes, her name, I am from Chicago. So my vowels are going to sound harder in that. So I Ephron. So I say Ephron. But there are some people I've met who say Ephron. But I think it's
not Ephron. Like there's like you don't
Nora
pronounce
Ephron.
the
Yeah, Ephron. Yeah, that's how I say it.
Yeah,
and that's how like people generally say it. But I also, sorry, I'm Waltering. I also know people who have said Ephron, but they didn't know her personally.
Yeah,
they're just fans. So I was like, oh, if the people who know her personally say Ephron, then maybe that's the right way. But yeah, whichever way you say it. Or you could just call her Nora.
Yeah. That's true. I feel like in the film industry, you just say Nora and people know.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
She's like De Niro. Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby. I'm just going to call him Bob. But Nora. Yeah. I feel like we're close enough to her, you know, spiritually to call her Nora.
Definitely.
Okay, so at the end of our podcast, we usually do like a little I don't know, like quick fire round thing where we kind of just like are gonna ask you like a few questions. First thing that comes to your mind, but we want to do a little twist on this where it's like only specifically Nora's films. So like normally we'll ask someone like what's your favorite rom-com just like in general. But then as I say that, I'm like most people actually say like in the universe of Nora, like that's the context for these. But the first one is just like, which is your favorite film?
Oh, You've Got Mail. Should I explain why?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, should we?
Oh, to me, it's the most perfect romantic comedy ever made. Every time I watch it, I just feel so good. It's so comforting. It's sad, but it's also uplifting. It's funny. And Tom and Meg, like in their prime, there was nobody better.
Do you have a favorite rom-com outfit from one of the films?
Yes. I love the black turtleneck. I know. I'm wearing one now.
Yeah.
I've been so influenced by these films. I love the black turtleneck she wears during her verbal sparring match with Joe Fox, you know, around the table at the dinner party. You know, the caviar is a garnish scene.
The caviar.
I just think she looks like so such an urban sophisticate. And so that was just so defining to me as far as my own basic style. My own turtleneck collection.
I love it. Do you have a favorite line of dialogue from one of the movies?
Yes. And I think it goes back to Patricia too.
Nice.
When Joe says to Kevin, Dave Chappelle's character, Patricia's amazing. Patricia makes coffee nervous. That's my favorite. Yeah, hands down. But there's so many good ones to choose from, but that always sticks out to me.
I love it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Erin, for chatting with us today. This was so inspiring, and we love Nora Ephron, and we love that you wrote a book about her and that you're a rom-com historian.
Yeah.
Best phrase ever. Best title ever.
What I guess what are you working on next, and like where can people
promote
find
yourself? Yeah, we should promote you.
They can find me. Excuse me. My next book isn't public yet, but I can't talk about it. But it's more of a romance thing. It's not really romance is set in England.
Ooh. Already interested. So how would we know when it's going to be released? We follow you on social media?
Yes. How people can find me. Have on Instagram at Erin Carlson. I talk a lot about rom-com on there. And also I have Doesn't Everyone, a Substack newsletter. And mine is called You've Got Mail.
Oh, cute.
And it just gave me another avenue just to go longer instead of like a caption, you know, so I go more in depth about rom-coms. Cool. And Glenn Powell.
Yeah, nice.
Ooh, okay, interested. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think that's our time for today, but this has been a lot of fun. I feel now like I need to watch When Harry Met Sally tonight, even though I have already watched it like 5 times this year.
I need to watch Sleepless in Seattle, which I've already seen this year as well.
I haven't seen Joe versus the Volcano in a while, so I actually might watch that.
Maybe that'd be good.
That is such a feel-good movie. I always cry when they're about to jump into the volcano, but anyway, it's great.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna watch tonight.
It's such a crazy movie, though. Like, when you think about it, you're like, how did they make this movie back then? It's so weird.
I love it.
Yeah.
But it works.
Oh,
well, thank you so much, and celebrate Nora's happy Nora birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday,
Happy Nora birthday.
Well, thank you, Erin, and thank you so much. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye. This has been an episode of When Isabel Met Aviva. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to make our day, please leave a positive review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the podcast platforms of your choice. And you can follow us on social media. We're active on Instagram at When Isabel Met Aviva and on Twitter /X at Isabel Met Aviva. I think that's right. Yes. And if you have any questions or need advice or just want to chat about a rom-com with us, feel free to reach out. And yeah, thank you so much. Oh, should we include our socials?
It's all in the
all our socials are in the show notes if you wanna follow us individually
for our guest.
Yes. So yeah, thank you so much. Don't forget to watch and write as many rom-coms as possible, and we will see you all very soon.
Yeah, and watch a Nora Ephron film this weekend.
In honor of Norah.
I will
watch Sleepless in Seattle probably. So okay, bye everyone.
Bye.